So we are now in the lymphatic system. So this is an adjunct chapter from the cardiovascular system, somewhat related. And I will highlight the importance of this one because you will get to know more of these different organs that are in the lymphatic system when you have your immunology in your third year. So the lymphatic system is composed primarily of, it's actually part of the circulatory system of the body and responsible for returning excess tissue fluid that has leaked out of the capillaries to the circulating blood. That's according to Aspinall and O'Reilly in 2004. Lymph is a fluid mentioned and is similar to plasma, However, this does not contain plasma proteins, and it has more lymphocytes present than in blood. You have there the lymphatic vessels, and the lymph tissues are found in all regions of the body except in the central nervous system and the bone marrow. So what's the function of the lymphatic system? So its function is to return excess tissue fluid that has leaked out of the capillaries to the circulating blood. They also remove bacteria and other foreign particles from the lymph. So you have here the different lymph nodes. So your lymph nodes are like garbage bins of the body. They also serve as barracks for their lymphocytes. So just to take note. So they are, and then they produce lymphocytes, which produce antibodies, as I mentioned in the previous video, that the B lymphocytes are the ones that produce antibodies, and they come in a bit later during an infection. They usually manifest around day 5 to day 10. And they also transport products of fat digestion and the fat-soluble vitamins from the lacteals of the intestinal villi to the circulation. So you have here the capillary, the lymphatic capillaries. So these are the lymphatic capillaries. So these are the network of vessels that carry lymph all over the body of the animal, again with the exemption of the bones, bone marrow, and the central nervous system. So these collect excess tissue fluid, and the smallest of the lymphatic capillaries, and they're thin-walled, and you have there the lacteals. These are found in the villi, and they collect products of fat digestion. Then we have the lymphatic vessels, which is similar to the structures of the vein. However, it possesses numerous closely spaced valves, and the lymph flow relies on the contraction of the surrounding muscles of movement. Then we have the lymphatic ducts. So I'm going to the next slide. So these are the lymphatic ducts. So you have here, these are larger than the lymphatic vessels, and they drain lymph into the blood vessels. So these are the different lymphatic ducts. So you have the right lymphatic duct. We also have the tracheal ducts. You also have the thoracic duct and the cisterna chyli. So the right lymphatic duct is the smallest of the major ducts and drains lymph from the right side of the head, neck, and thorax, and the right forelimb, and it empties into the heart by the right jugular vein or the cranial vena cava. The thoracic duct, on the other hand, is the main lymphatic duct, which arises from the abdomen, and it has a cisterna chyli, which receives lymph from the abdomen, pelvis, which is usually here, and the hind limbs. So that's the cisterna chyli, which is part of the thoracic duct. Then we have the tracheal ducts, which happens to be the only paired lymphatic ducts. They drain lymph from the head and neck and into the thoracic duct or any of the large veins near the heart. Now we go to the different parts of the lymph nodes. So most of the lymph nodes looks like this. They're bean-shaped, and they're found in all over the body except for the CNS and the bone marrow. So it has a hilus. So this is the hilus. So this is the indented region and the location where the lymph vessels leave the nodes. They also have the afferent lymphatic vessels, which carry lymph to each lymph node and enter the node on its convex surface. So we have here the afferent lymphatic vessels. So this is the convex surface, right? It's the convex surface. So you have the afferent lymphatic vessels. So the lymph coming from another vessel will from another lymph node will pass through here. And then we have the efferent lymphatic vessels. They leave the lymph through here. So then you have here the hilus. Then of course it has a capsule. So the outer coating is the capsule. Trabeculae are the extension of the capsule and provide structural support. So these here, so this is the capsule. So these here are the trabeculae. So you have here, this is a trabeculae. So this is the capsule, and that's the trabeculae over here. Okay. Then we also have the cortex. So the cortex is this one. And then this is the medulla. And in the medulla, you can find the plasma cells and the macrophages. In the cortex, it's the germinal center for your lymphocytes. And of course, they have sinuses. So you have a marginal sinus here. So lymph flows through it in the lymph node. Now you have several major lymph nodes. Sorry, go to the previous slide. So you have here the submandibular lymph node, which is over here. The parotid lymph node is actually over here at the angle of the jaw. So you have the submandibular here, and then here you have the parotid. You also have the superficial cervical nodes. So when you say cervical, they're found on the neck. And then your axillary nodes, these are the found on their armpits. And then we have the popliteal node, which is right, just caudal to the stifle joint. And then we also have the inguinal lymph node. So these are the nodes that you can palpate. These guys are superficial enough that it's palpable. So what are the indications if it's enlarged? So it can be that the animal is currently fighting off an infection, especially if they're really, really sick. Or if not, meaning they have a functional immune system. So that's an indicator. Now we go to the biggest lymph node of them all, the spleen. So the spleen, so here's the spleen. So this is the liver, this is the diaphragm, and that's the heart. And you have here the lungs, and you have here the stomach, and you have the large intestines. Over here, you have the large intestines. This is what you expect when we're going to dissect an actual animal. And this is the spleen. It's usually on the upper quadrant or the upper half of the abdomen. So this happens to be the largest lymphoid tissue, and they're found within the greater omentum, closely attached to the greater curvature of the stomach, and it's usually dark red or burgundy in color. So the function of the spleen would include reservoir for erythrocytes and platelets. It's also the graveyard for aging erythrocytes. And then it preserves iron and removes particulate matter from the circulation, and they also produce lymphocytes. Another lymphatic tissue is the thymus, which we discussed in passing with the circulatory system. And the thymus is one of the few lymphatic tissues that will atrophy. When you say atrophy, it begins to small until its size becomes smaller as the animal matures until it disappears when the animal becomes an adult. However, in comparative anatomy, you will know a species of animal whose thymus will remain until the rest of its life. So that's something that you have to look forward to, and you must pass anatomy 1. So these are found only in young animals, the thymus gland or the thymus, and it lies in the cranial thoracic inlet the cranial part of the thorax, and this one produces the T lymphocytes for memory cells. So the T lymphocytes are varied. You have the helper T, you have the helper T cells, you also have the killer T cells, you also have the memory T cells. And the memory T cells are the ones responsible in remembering what is the antigen of that certain pathogen. So that's the reason why when you get sick, for example, either you are sick already or you have been vaccinated to a certain disease, if that disease is reintroduced to your body, your T lymphocytes will remember that, oh, they have the data that this is, let's say, you already had chickenpox before, or you had been vaccinated against chickenpox, and then your classmate happens to have chickenpox, and then since you sit beside your classmate who has chickenpox, and your immune system, particularly your memory T lymphocytes, remembered the chickenpox, how it looks like, automatically the body will produce the antibodies against chickenpox because you had that before. Get me? That's the reason why. And lastly, you also have the tonsils. So the tonsils form a ring of lymphatic tissue around the junction of the pharynx in the oral cavity. And this is the first line of defense against microorganisms that enter the mouth, considering that the mouth also connects with the respiratory tract. I hope you do have any more. I hope this is short enough for you, and we'll move to the respiratory system which is up next.